Hi, my name is John Moore, and this is my Birth of a Policy presentation. For this presentation, I will be talking about the Migrant Protection Protocols, aka Remain in Mexico. So the agenda for this presentation is I'll go through some background on the Migrant Protection Protocols, briefly talk about the timeline, talk about the public sentiment, speak on some special interest groups, discuss the political champions and the communication efforts surrounding this, and talk about the opposing sides and tactics. And if there's any time, I will take some questions. So background on this topic on the Migrant Protection Protocols, also known as Remain in Mexico. So the Migrant Protection Protocols are a U.S. government action whereby certain foreign individuals entering or seeking admission to the United States from Mexico illegally or without proper documentation may be returned to Mexico and wait outside of the U.S. for the duration of their immigration proceedings, where Mexico will provide them with all appropriate humanitarian protections for the duration of their stay. And this is from the Department of Homeland Security website 2019. The reason why this policy exists is because the U.S. is facing a security and humanitarian crisis on the southern border. The Department of Homeland Security is using all appropriate resources and authorities to address the crisis and execute our missions to secure the borders, enforce immigrations and customs laws, facilitate legal trade and travel, counter traffickers, smugglers, and transnational criminal organizations, and interdict drugs and illegal contraband. The MPP will help to restore a safe and orderly immigration process, decrease the number of those taking advantage of the immigration system, and the ability of smugglers and traffickers to prey on vulnerable populations, and reduce threats to life, national security, and public safety, while ensuring that vulnerable public populations receive the protections that they need. On the next 3 slides, you'll see quite a bit of text, but I've highlighted what I believe are some important takeaways. So on this slide 4, so in January 2019, President Trump issued executive orders 13767, border security and immigration enforcement improvements. And in April 2018, the DOJ requires court judges to comply with these case quotas. And Attorney General Sessions introduces the zero tolerance policy, which triggered widespread family separations. Towards the end of the year, in November 2018, the Asylum Ban 1.0, barring immigrants who cross between ports from asylum eligibility. And in December 2018, the Department of Homeland Security, consistent with the Migrant Protection Protocols, will begin implementation of Section 235B to C of the Immigration and Nationality Act on a large-scale basis to address the migration crisis along the southern border. On this slide, I'll focus on a couple different points. So in January 2019, the Migrant Protection Protocol, aka Remain in Mexico, was implemented. In July 2019, all undocumented immigrants in the interior became targets for arrest and deportation through new IFR expanding procedures that expedite deportation. Administration announces that it has reached a deal with Guatemala to hold the flow of Central American migrants to the U.S. And in September 2019, the administration reaches an agreement with Honduras, effectively blocking asylum seekers from reaching the United States. Also in September 2019, the Supreme Court allows full implementation of the Asylum Ban 2.0, which bars migrants who cross through another country prior to arriving at the United States border from asylum eligibility. In January 2020, Customs and Border Protection begins expanding new programs in the Rio Grande Valley, cutting off asylum seekers from accessing legal counsel and rushing them through the credible fear process. In February 2021, the Department of Homeland Security announced the beginning of the process to unwind the MPP. Keep in mind that at this point, the Biden administration had taken over. In this initial phase, individuals in Mexico with active cases were permitted to register online or by phone with the UNHCR and paroled into the U.S. at a port of entry. The AILA called on the DHS to expand processing to additional people who were subjected to MPP given the significant due process and fairness concerns surrounding the whole program. And in November 2021, the Biden administration announced their plans to restart the MPP policy at the border in mid-November. So the public sentiment around the migrant protection protocols really depends on who you ask. President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy is dangerous, inhumane, and goes against everything we stand for as a nation of immigrants, said then candidate Joe Biden in a tweet in March of 2020. My administration will end it. The benefits of MPP are far outweighed by the cost of continuing to use the program on a programmatic basis in whatever form. And this is from DHS Secretary Mayorkas in a 4-page memo. In a report published by Human Rights Watch, they described how Trump's policy needlessly and foreseeably exposed asylum seekers to considerable risk of serious harm. It is likely that many Biden supporters share the same sentiment. Conversely, it is likely that some Trump supporters or other conservatives are in favor of the Remain in Mexico policy. Specifically, when asked about building a border wall specifically, do you favor or oppose building a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border to try to stop illegal immigration? 86% of Republicans were in favor, with 7% and 7% responding oppose or unsure, respectively. 13% of Democrats were in favor, with 79% and 8% respectively responding oppose and unsure. The public sentiment about this appears to fall generally along the party lines. There are undoubtedly a lot of special interest groups that are interested in the migrant protection protocols and immigration in general. Some of them I found are the American Immigration Lawyers Association, the American Immigration Council, Human Rights Watch, Human Rights First, and the National Immigrant Justice Center. So this slide lists some of the political champions or those that are particularly interested in the migrant protection protocols and immigration. And you can see the name of the person, when they said whatever it was that they said, and also a quote. This will tie into the communication efforts. On this slide, you'll start to see how each person, based on their political party or viewpoint or whatever, how their quote ties into the narrative. For example, Joe Biden says, xenophobia is a disease, invest in Latinos. And President Trump says, countless Americans are killed each year by criminal aliens. So as you look through this list, you'll start to pick up on the narrative that each person is starting to drive, and this will kind of tie into the next slide. Building off of the previous slide, I'm going to now talk about some of the communication efforts related to the migrant protection protocols. Simply put, the communication efforts kind of vary by political party. When speaking for the MPP immigration in general, conservatives often seem to use and drive the narrative of national security is border security. I think Mike Pence said that. Some paint the picture of the immigrants as a threat to national security and focus on doing more for Americans. When speaking against the MPP and immigration in general, liberals often seem to focus on the humanitarian aspect and providing opportunities for people from all over the world. They will frequently talk about how America was founded by immigrants. Outside of these politicians, these communication themes seem to remain the same. At the same time, though, the narrative is not always consistent across the parties. For example, Vice President Kamala Harris on June 8, 2021, on her first overseas visit, urged Guatemalan migrants to not come to the United States. She said, quote, do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our borders. This appears to be at odds with what appears to be typically a welcoming narrative to all comers. Now I'll talk about some of the opposing sides and some of their tactics related to the migrant protection protocols conversation. In general, after reading a variety of resources, I get the impression that there are two primary sides to this argument. One that is pro-immigration and against the MPP, and one that is pro-MPP but for legal immigration following the processes. I didn't get the impression that everyone who is pro-MPP is against immigration. They seem to argue for simply just doing it the right way. Those that are against the MPP seem to use the tactic of painting those that are pro-MPP as racist or xenophobic. Those that are for the MPP seem to not always attack those as being un-American, but mainly emphasize that America should come first or talk about how it is unfair for people to jump ahead in the immigration system, which is already taxed. Context really does matter. So I just want to share a couple of personal anecdotes having worked on the southern border in 2019 in support of the border mission. So many of the Border Patrol agents I interacted with were from Mexico. I didn't ask about their political affiliation, but many spoke of immigration as a good thing, but they also emphasized the need to follow the established processes Basically, wait your turn and follow the rules, the same as what they did. Having caravan surges at ports of entry is dangerous for everyone, not only the people that live near the POEs, but also for some of the migrants. One of the tactics of painting the Border Patrol agents as racist seems to be a little bit misguided. This kind of ties into what I was mentioning in the last slide. This was not really my experience with the Border Patrol, particularly interacting with the agents of all administrative levels, so from some of the executive to the patrolmen, etc. Often, some of the communication tactics seem to leave out a lot of important context about how the agents have to do their jobs. I think that if more people knew exactly what the terrain looked like along the border, they might understand why using a horse for transportation is a good thing. No different than using dirt bikes and ATVs as well as 4x4 trucks and helicopters. I know that one of the narratives that was on TV within the last couple of months was, why are the Border Patrol agents riding around on horseback, with whips or whatever it was that the narrative was. In my experience, again, this appears to be incorrect. Appropriate context is often omitted from many of the talking points on both sides of the argument. This is quite dangerous. Not only that, it seems that people without actual experience on the border may become emotionally driven by what they see on digital media, and then they'll jump to certain conclusions without truly understanding the situation. And these next two slides are just the references that I looked at when creating this presentation. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.